Hello and welcome to TVC News. This hour we begin the news talking about the ongoing ASUU strike. Members of the Youth Parliament in Ondo State have urged the leadership of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, to review the industrial action in the interest of the country's education system. The youth also called the federal government, challenged the federal government to meet the demands of the striking lecturers in the interest of the students. They made this appeal in a sitting in Akure, the state capital. Our correspondent Ayodeji Muradio reports.
The strike embarked upon by members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, has paralyzed activities in universities across Nigeria. The lecturers, among other demands, want better funding of the education sector. This issue and many others came up for discussion at a sitting of the Ondo State Youth Parliament in Akure, the state capital. The youth want both parties in the industrial dispute to shift ground in the interest of the students. The Speaker of the Parliament, Smith Ikumakpayi, said the strike has crippled academic activities in the universities.
ASUU and the federal government that they should come together, they should sit down and have a roundtable discussion on how to find a lasting solution to the demands of ASUU. They should look into the demands, and ASUU should also please compromise too. They might not get all what they want for the interest of the average student at home that is at the receiving end of their action.
Starting to look like a prevalent thing in Nigeria surrounding our educational system, where the government have to force lecturers, teachers to go on strike, affecting the education of these youth. It's really quite unfortunate, and we can only still continue to plead and look up to the government to find a way around.
The young parliamentarians also urge youth to take charge of the political space. They agree that more youths are venturing into politics, which they say should be given more push.
The monetization of election is the demonization of the youth. It forces the youth to the corner and ensures that they look for every means possible, especially those interested in the act of governance or leadership.
A workable policy that will be able to elevate, the standard of living of young people in this community. And I think that demography, young people, is a very critical segment of our society that we cannot afford.
Parliamentarians also agreed that aggressive participation in voter registration is of paramount importance for the young ones to take charge politically. Ayodeji Muradio, TVC News, Akure.
And away from that, in Delta State, the police command has confirmed the arrest of a man suspected to be involved in the killing of an army lieutenant in Efuru. The police also have in their custody some suspected cultists who were alleged to have killed 4 rival cult members in Jesse, Ethiopia local government area of the state. Ikena Michi reports.
On the 11th of this month, an army lieutenant was shot dead in his private car in Enere community, Uwe Council area of Delta State, and the police immediately launched a manhunt for his killers. Today, the police commissioner in the state, during a parade of suspects, which include suspected cultists, kidnappers, armed robbers, speaks more about the death of the young military officer.
We had a bad incident where a lieutenant, the ops officer of Nigerian Army based in Warri, was shot at the wee hours of that night. My men, led by the DPO Enere himself, were on patrol along Urobo College Road. They saw a young man that was, dead, lying lifeless in the pool of his own blood, and the body was picked to the station. His pocket was searched, an ID card was recovered. Then a call was put across to our sister agency, and in fact they confirmed that he is one Lieutenant M.M. Musa. One suspect has been arrested, and the command is making efforts with a view to ensuring that his allies, those who partake in that dastardly act, are also arrested and dealt with.
On parade here are these 43 young men arrested for their alleged involvement in cultism, which is prevalent in some parts of the state, with the recent cult-related killings in Jesse, Ethiopia West Council area.
I want to inform you today that we have arrested 3 of the notorious members of Arobaga group that were indeed responsible for this killing, and they are all here. Cultists, like you are aware, have been disturbing the command in recent times, not just at Ogara and Jesse Axis alone.
This young man is in custody for unsuccessful suicide attempt. The police also recovered some arms and ammunition.
The rise in court-related violence in the state can be reflected in the number of suspects arrested for courtism, as the State Police Command wants school authority and the state government to do more to ensure courtism is reduced to the barest minimum. Ikenna Amechi, TVC News, Asaba.
Well, talking politics, some northern youths have predicted that the All Progressives Congress will emerge stronger from the current leadership crisis within the party. They spoke in Port Harcourt while reacting to the controversies trailing the build-up to the National Convention scheduled for the 26th of March 2022. Senior reporter Uche Okoro has more.
The jostle for leadership positions in the All Progressives Congress at the national level has become a source of concern for some party faithful. Particularly, the dispute over the office of the national chairman is again raising concerns that the APC may be weakening its chances at the polls in 2023. Many Nigerians are also waiting to see the impacts that President Muhammad Buhari's intervention would have on the situation. But for the South and Southeast Arewa Youth Group, there is no cause for alarm. The successful conduct of the APC National Convention would restore normalcy to the party.
And the issue of this crisis lingering till 2023, I don't see it lingering till 2023. The crisis will naturally die immediately after the convention. The heat of the crisis and everything is due to this convention. Every bloc is trying to make sure they bring out the national chairman from their own bloc. But we strongly believe by 26 to 27 of this month, after the convention, this internal crisis will die naturally.
These youths of northern extraction are optimistic that Senator Umar Tanko Al-Makura would emerge as the new national chairman of the All Progressives Congress. The group talked about the former governor's experience and credibility, 2 qualities that they insist are necessary for leading the APC. The history of the party, they say, supports their position.
Among the 3 major political parties that form the APC, only the CPC are yet to produce a national chairman. We strongly believe now is the time for a national chairman. We strongly believe now is the time for a national chairman from CPC, and the most suitable and formidable person is Senator Umar Tanko Al-Makura.
The South and Southeast Arewa Youth Group also rejected the idea of a consensus candidate for the position of national chairman, saying only an open contest would produce the best. Uche Okoro, TVC News, Port Harcourt.
The Lagos State government has published a social protection policy handbook that focuses on poverty, illiteracy, inequality, amongst others. This follows the approval of the state social protection policy by the State Executive Council in August 2020. Iniolua Pupola reports.
Nigeria's poverty rate stands at 40.1%, while the country's unemployment rate at 33.3%. Also, over 76 million Nigerian adults are illiterate. With the increasing population in Nigeria, these figures are expected to double. But the Lagos State government has adopted the social protection policy through the federal government to assist in addressing the core social and economic issues.
The policy aims to create an all-inclusive and comprehensive method of addressing socio-economic vulnerabilities to poverty and deprivation at all levels in our society.
In partnership with the United Nations International Children Emergency Fund, the policies contained in this handbook aims at promoting inclusive growth, equality, security, as well as ensuring a life of dignity for residents of Lagos.
The Lagos State, in addition to what it's currently doing, is going to provide free school meals to pupils in public primary school. There's a provision for all children and adults living with disabilities.
A fully developed and well-generated single social register will afford that man on the street, that man in the corner of his own community, way out there in Ibejuleki or in Badagry, will also be able to have access to government intervention.
Social protection is seen as a fundamental human right which every individual should obtain.
If all the provisions of this program are implemented, there are chances of shaping all the social vices into positive things in the country.
With the hashtag Ambition 2030 of the 2015 Sustainable Development Goals, this intervention from the state government will allow a steady progress in ensuring the rights of all citizens are well secured and protected. Inioluwa Popola, TVC News, Lagos.
You're watching TVC News. We move to Borno State, where more than 1,000 less privileged persons in Maiduguri have benefited from food, seedlings and cash assistance courtesy of the Wali of Borno State. The humanitarian assistance is aimed at giving them a sense of belonging. TVC News' Jessica Fida reports.
6 different locations within Maiduguri and Jere Local Council benefited from the humanitarian gesture, including the State Specialist Hospital, Kamburi Kura, Kamburi Ghana, and Fatima Ali Sharif Orphanage. At the State Specialist Hospital, patients at the pediatric ward benefited from cash assistance to enable them buy drugs and other medical items.
We need to identify ourselves as colleagues in humanity, our human colleagues before any other thing. We should always try and reach out to the downtrodden, those truly in need, those that cannot reach out. I often say, even if you don't have much, but if you have the privilege to reach out to someone and even ask, it's even a privilege. So we will keep doing that for as long as we live and whatever means we have.
Medical Director of the hospital and beneficiaries lauded the monarch for the gesture.
We are happy to have people like you in our midst that have been doing this. Is not the first time and this is not the second. So we are very happy for you. Sister, may Allah reward.
She says, I never expected this today. My son has been sick for 5 days now. This support would go a long way in settling our medical bills. I am very grateful by this gesture. I'm delighted. I pray God to bless Wali for doing this. Food and cash assistance was also distributed to the blind in Maiduguri, as well as to the Fatima Ali Sharif Orphanage. The Wali of Borno also presented 500 different types of seedlings to be used by the less privileged as economic trees.
The management of the State Specialist Hospital appreciate this gesture and are calling on other well-to-do individuals to come to the aid of the less privileged in the society so as to put a smile on their faces. Jessica Fida, TVC News, Maiduguri.
Now, are you aware that each year recyclables save more than 700 million tons in global carbon emissions? But by 2030, this figure is expected to have increased to 1 billion tons. With that in mind, environmental advocates are urging for better ways of recycling, which will save more lives and the environment. Kemi Balogun reports.
It is Global Recycling Day, a day set aside to encourage people to think again about what is thrown away. This year is shifting focus to celebrate the recycling fraternity, those who put themselves on the front line to collect waste and recycle them during the multiple lockdowns.
To support improvement.
This school in the heart of the capital city is doing its own part to ensure that waste is used for the good of the students and not left to be harmful to the environment through the construction of this toilet.
We need to keep the world clean and the environment clean so that we won't have like issues with the environment.
Encourage, and I'll also put waste bins in every corner of my house so that it can be easier if you want to recycle anything rather than throwing it on the floor, and also be hygienic.
When you get this waste and you're able to segregate them properly, you'll be able to know which one you can recycle and they will be of use. Even in the school here, that is what we do.
Global Recycling Day was created to help recognize and celebrate the importance recycling plays in preserving the primary resources of the planet. Environmental advocates like Dorothy believe that recycling is one way to save the planet and secure its future.
Most of the waste we generate in our offices, in our homes, in our schools are majorly recyclable waste. I'm talking of paper, I'm talking of plastic and metal. So what we do now, instead of evacuating this waste to the dump sites, we train cleaners for free to segregate this waste using the color-coded bin, and when they segregate it, we evacuate it to a recycling company free of charge.
The day strives to urge world leaders that recycling must be a global issue and encourage people to think resourcefully and not waste. Kemi Balogun, TVC News, Abuja.
The Nigeria Medical Association (FCT) is proposing an extension period for the disengagement of the public-private partnership arrangement between the Federal Capital Territory Administration and the current management of the Garki General Hospital, Abuja. They believe this will give room for a more effective, smoother, and more humane transition for both the patients and more than 900 medical personnel that could be affected. Kemi Balogun has more.
Since the 1st of March this year, reactions have continued to trail the notice served to the management of the Garki General Hospital by the Federal Capital Territory Administration to vacate and hand over the facility. An agreement signed between the duo in 2007 has now elapsed after 15 years, but the ripple effect caused by the suddenness of this disengagement order has been termed as ill-timed. Today, the Medical Association, who are at the verge of losing hundreds of jobs, are lending their voice to this issue, calling for a reconsideration to the time frame given so that no one is left behind.
If there's a debt to be paid and is a reason for the termination notice, I'm sure they can sit down and come to some form of agreement. Because if you rent somebody's house, you're supposed to pay rent. And so, but my worry now is the tenants who have been working assiduously in the last 15 years in that facility, who have been holding forth when all the public hospitals have been on strike. And we all know that when all the public hospitals are on strike in FCT, Garki Hospital still works, still functions. And all of a sudden, you're asking them to pack their bags and go home within a short period.
I don't think 1 month is reasonable notice for a facility of that nature. And that even if it is also part of the agreement, looking at the facilities, we feel that using self-help will not be advisable. Because what happens if at the end of 1 month, they are unable to evacuate?
The group also wants the federal government and the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation to look into the present fuel crisis happening in the country in order to lessen the burden on doctors.
The situation has severely affected the practice of medicine. Health workers are now finding it increasingly difficult to get to their places of work to discharge their duties, not to mention the adverse effects on productivity.
Lawmakers on Thursday had resolved to ask the FCTA to stay action on the termination of the concession agreement, pending the intervention of the Committees on Privatization, Commercialization and Health Institutions on the matter. More than 100 doctors and thousands of patients could be affected if the FCTA goes through with the vacation order. Kemi Balogun, TVC News, Abuja.
On the foreign scene, the United Nations Migration Agency says nearly 6.5 million people have been displaced inside Ukraine, and this is in addition to the 3.2 million who have already fled the country. These findings are contained in a paper issued on Friday by the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. In what the UN Refugee Agency is now calling Europe's gravest refugee crisis since World War II, over 12 million people are estimated to be stranded in affected areas or unable to leave due to heightened security risk, destruction of bridges and roads, as well as lack of resources or information on where to find safety and accommodation. And as the conflict rages, Mayor of Mariupol has confirmed that gun battles are now being fought in Mariupol as Russian troops have now reached the city center. In the meantime, according to reports, Moscow has yet to take over any of Ukraine's biggest cities, despite attacks by land, sea and air. But Russian President Vladimir Putin is showing no sign of relenting. We have details in this report. But thank you very much for watching at this hour. We'll be back at the 10 o'clock hour. Stay tuned.